Troop for the first time at a gathering of prison reformers and anti-death penalty activists on Folly Beach, South Carolina. Nibs and I were among about a half dozen organizers who stayed in a cottage across the road from the ocean. The cottage is backed up to a serene marsh Nibs affectionately called the bird sanctuary. Somewhere in our photo albums at home, we have the most wonderful picture I took of Nibs, standing at the edge of a wooden walkway in bathing trunks, delightedly pointing out to his beloved bird sanctuary. And here we are this evening, 40 years later, in Decatur, Georgia, at the Courtyard Marriott, celebrating Oakhurst Presbyterian Church, and most especially the ministry of my friend, our friend, Nibs. Thanks so much, Nibs, for giving Dee and me a chance to share with you our love and admiration for you, for Caroline, for Susan and David and his family. Nibs and I bonded fast after that sojourn to Folly Beach. Despite my living in New Orleans, and he in Nashville at the time, we connected often at Southern Coalition on Jails and Prisons staff meetings and conferences and death penalty protests and occasional execution sites. And when Dee and I married in 1983 and moved west to Oakland, California for a couple of years, Nibs and I managed to keep in touch, and I learned that he and later Caroline had accepted the call to pastor here at Oakhurst.
So John and I, along with our 5-month-old son, Gabriel, who's also here tonight, moved to the Open Door community in Atlanta in 1985. Not too long after arriving here, we visited Oakhurst for the first time, and I got to meet Nibs finally, and we all got to meet Caroline. They were living in seminary housing on Kirk Road, not far from Oakhurst, with little David and Susan. Their quiet home, secluded in the woods, became something of a retreat space for the Kolvatica family, a place to occasionally get away from the busyness and demands of the Open Door, and it was almost like our own bird sanctuary. In the following years, we lived in several Christian communities, had 2 more boys, Luke and Sam, and eventually we landed in Americus, Georgia, where John directed and founded the Prison and Jail Project. We lived there for almost 18 years, and Oakhurst and Nibs and Caroline gave considerable support to our work in South Georgia. And over those years, and during that time, the Stroop, Leach, and Kolvatica families developed a very strong and life-lasting friendship. That is, for us, one of the deepest friendships that we've ever known. During those years, we visited with Nibs and Caroline often, sharing stories of our lives' journeys, about our children, baseball, and justice-seeking hopes and dreams. John and I were inspired by Nibs' prophetic sermons and his unique and powerful voice. But I should say that a continuing threat through our boys' childhoods was that Nibs would say if they ever misbehaved, he was going to make them listen to many tapes of his sermons. I'm sure there's other children that have received that. But seriously, we were profoundly influenced by the church, by Nibs' work with the church, his work to undo racism, to own his own shortcomings as a white person, his courage in standing up to the powers and principalities that sought to divide and crush people who live in the margins.
And we deeply fell in love with Oakhurst Presbyterian Church and the wondrous tapestry of the people in that congregation. Buddy and Ann, Bob and Mary, Christine and Charlie, Azzy, Rocky and Beth, Kevin and Mitzi, and so many of you who are here tonight, who Mary, Smar, Inez, so many of you who are here tonight, became so important to us in our journey. And Jane and Andy Lipscomb. After we moved to Minneapolis, Micah, Andy and Jane's son, who's here tonight, and his wife Susanna, Lipscomb found a house near Oakhurst and started regularly attending church.
Now, you should know that Andy Lipscomb, who was a preacher in the Will Campbell style of 40 acres and a gold mold, didn't think highly of organized religion. He really did not like the capital C church, and he was always telling folks, church is a verb. But after Micah and Susanna and Owen, their little boy, became invested in the life at Oakhurst, Andy actually began occasionally setting foot in the sanctuary. And that says a lot about Oakhurst and about Nibs and Caroline.
Some of you know that in 2008, my life crashed and burned. And for much of a year, I was mostly alone. Bee moved from South Georgia to Minneapolis, and I, thanks in large part to Nibs and Caroline's urging, moved here to Decatur. It was during that year that I witnessed up close Nibs and Caroline's and Oakhurst's amazing pastoral gifts. I was broken, I was fearful, ashamed, and you all wrapped me in your ever-loving arms. You took me in, and you helped me rebuild from the ashes. I will never forget the times Nibs and Caroline sat with me, counseled me, laughed with me, took me to dinner at the Our Way Cafe, let me crash on your date nights and be a threesome with you. And unbeknownst to me, you were at the same time staying in touch with Dee despite the miles between she and you. Thank you, Nibs, and thank you, Caroline, for the wonderful gift of pastoral care.
And in large part, because of that love and that care, John and I will celebrate our 33rd wedding anniversary on Saturday.
Hallelujah. So I can't have this opportunity to speak this evening and not talk a little bit about baseball. And about Nibs' boyhood hero, the Mighty Mike, Nellie Fox, who in the 1950s, for those of you who might not date that far back, was a Chicago White Sox phenom. He was also one of Major League Baseball's shortest players, a 5'9", 150-pound second baseman with extraordinary defensive capabilities. During his career, he and mostly with Louis Aparicio, who played shortstop for the White Sox, the two of them turned 1,568 double plays. And get this one, in his entire Major League career, Nellie Fox struck out only 216 times, once every 43 at-bats. Nibs was enamored with Nellie Fox. And though I was sort of the Pittsburgh Grote Mazurowski fan, we bonded also around baseball and kept up with one another's favorite teams and favorite players in the years that we were apart. And I include Nellie Fox in our remarks because I know that Nibs still has a deep, probably not so secret, love for the White Sox. But he's been much more of a devoted Braves fan these last 33 or 40 years. And we know now that the Braves have deserted Atlanta for the Northern Burbs. And I believe this has rubbed Nibs hard and in a very wrong way. So now's the time, especially in retirement, to dump the Braves. Swear allegiance to the White Sox and Nellie Fox. We hope this little gift from us will encourage you to have the incentive to make the switch. President Obama is also a big fan.
So we love you, Nibs. We love you, Caroline. Thank you and congratulations